All right, everyone, welcome to today's Orchestry webinar all around data security posture management. What is it? Why would you use it? And we have, I think, the best and smartest person in the entire world to talk about this. So I'm super excited about having Joanne here. I'll go through a couple of slides here before we turn it over to Joanne for all of the good stuff. But if you haven't been to any of our Orchestry webinars before, welcome. My name is Michael Bisarik. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Orchestry. Again, lots of experience in Microsoft 365, nearly 17 years, maybe a little bit longer within this space. And again, really passionate about helping organizations get the most value out of Microsoft 365. I am joined by Joanne. Joanne, event starter Klein, we will call you from now on, Joanne. So welcome.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Joanne Klein. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm kind of intrigued by Michael's last bullet point, former professional chef. That I'd like you to prepare something for me. That sounds great. Happy to be here today. I own my own consulting company. I work exclusively in Microsoft Purview. And all of that, all of what that means, which is a lot of things at times. And I also have a strong SharePoint background, which has proven very helpful over the years. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Orchestry. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. So a little bit about us. We're a platform, sits on top of Microsoft 365. We help you with all sorts of good stuff. We even help you with some of the things that Purview does do but doesn't do maybe that well. We can help you with all of those capabilities. But essentially, we're a platform that can help you scale and manage your governance efforts across Microsoft 365. Not going to go through the sales spin here, but lots of capabilities, lots of features, everything from provisioning to security to lifecycle management, all sorts of good stuff. If you are interested, then get in touch with us and we'll be more than happy to help you show you some of the capabilities that we have. But we're here for a webinar. Now, if you've never been to an Orchestry webinar before, we try to run them a little bit different. Joanne knows this. She's done one else before. We try to make them as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please put them into the chat. We will try to get to them as much as we can. Joanne, if I get annoying interrupting you with questions, just tell me to shut up and then just keep going. But for the relevant ones, we'll try to answer them in real time. But definitely, Joanne is a world-renowned expert on this. Think of this as almost free consulting or a taste of the consulting experience with Joanne. So if you have questions, let us know. We'll try to answer them. If not, we'll make sure we'll get to them and get you some answers after the webinar here. So before we begin, to get the engagement going, where is everyone joining us from today? If you want to put your meeting location, if you like, within the chat and where you're joining us from, that would be great. And we'll see where the wide breadth of people are from. Now, before we do that as well, just to get started, we have a poll today just to see where everyone is at. So I'm going to share this poll here, launch. Okay, and today's question is, how familiar are you with DSPM and DSPM for AI in Microsoft 365? Here, just to set the stage. Either you've never heard of it, you've heard of it, but not sure what it means. Joanne, I think that's where I'm at. Kind of, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it means. You're starting to look into it, or you're actively implementing as well. So we'll wait a couple of minutes here. Oh, lots of responses already here. 35. This is the new polls app in Teams. It's very good. It used to be terrible. It's really good now. It actually does a pretty good job here. I'll wait for 5 more seconds here. Let me do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Let me. Perfect. So 54% of you are starting to look into it. 10% Joanna actively implemented or exploring solutions, and the other 38% have either never heard of it or heard of it but not sure what it means. So pretty wide breadth of stuff. Yeah. Okay, Joanne, over to you.
Let's get started.
Hands up for anyone who has never had any bad experiences with Teams. See, no one's hands go up, Joanne. This is a common thing.
Okay, you can see it now and you can hear me.
We are ready to rock and roll.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit faster, because I lost some very valuable time there. I'm going to approach today's conversation whether or not you've already implemented some Purview controls, because I think that's the value add of these two solutions we're talking about. And yes, there are two solutions, DSPM and DSPM for AI. I'll explain those acronyms, the value add they provide, and how they integrate across Purview. So hopefully this will level set on what these two solutions are offering. Both of these solutions still follow that construct that Microsoft has in place of discover, protect, and govern your content all up at a very high level. Once you start adding and layering in some of these Purview solutions, you can see where the solutions kind of fit inside of this circle. And there's a lot of them there. This is kind of the big hitters that I'm focusing on today. So let's talk about DSPM, or Data Security Posture Management. It's really looking for data vulnerabilities in your environment. Whether you've implemented other Purview solutions or not, that's not required. It will look at what is currently going on across your environment. So super helpful if you haven't started, and also helpful for identifying maybe gaps if you've already started. I'm going to explain this by an infographic that I put together. And I think if I was starting by not knowing anything about the solution, my hope is that this will help position it appropriately. If we look at Compliance Manager, that's a solution inside of Purview. That's where whatever regulation your organization must adhere to is listed with different assessments, controls, and activities that you must do as a customer. Microsoft does some of them in order to be compliant. Many of those activities and actions it's going to suggest are things you can do in Purview. Not all of them, but many of them are. Things like information protection. So that's setting up sensitivity labels, big projects. That's a big effort on its own. Defining basically how data is going to be protected across your organization, and if it is going to be protected. Then you have things like data loss prevention. You might want to have some policies in place to prevent data exfiltration. That's another very robust tool inside of Purview that operates a whole bunch of data sources and endpoints, and can really fine-tune your protection strategy. Then there's insider risk management, looking at user data-related activity. What are they doing? Are they doing it with risky or sensitive data rather? And then it ties in with adaptive protection, which is a relatively new, like within the last couple of years, capability where based on what a user is doing, they get assigned a risk level. And elevated risk users, the highest risk, different policies can dynamically Purview policies and Entra policies with conditional access can dynamically adjust accordingly. Really a smart way of doing it. So we haven't even touched DSPM yet, but I just want to talk about what's going on in Purview. Now enters DSPM. It looks at a whole bunch of things across your environment. The Entra identities, it pulls a whole bunch of stuff from the audit log. Looks at classifiers. That's a Purview thing. You have pre-built ones, custom ones you can do. It uses that to figure out, what's going on across your environment with sensitive data. It pulls in these M365 data sources only for now, and then it can do this across different endpoints. If you have information protection, it uses that information. to identify what's labeled and what isn't, and does the label apply protection. So in my little image here, confidential and highly confidential, the lock means there's an additional level of protection on that that controls who can access it and what they can do with it. So it pulls in that information because that's going to help inform its recommendations. It looks at if you have any current DLP policies in place. What kinds of things is it looking for? How does that align with what end users are doing with what DSPM is seeing in the audit log? And do you have any insider risk management policies in place? It looks for data-related, potentially risky user activity. What does that look like? And is there a risk or a data vulnerability there? Optionally, not required at all, I want to make this crystal clear. You can use Security Copilot, and you will see it integrated on the landing page of DSPM to use this to gain further insights on what's going on across your environment. It can ask these types of questions. You can certainly find these things without Security Copilot, but it just makes that job a little bit quicker for the teams triaging this information. At the end of this, DSPM is probably going to make some recommendations in the form of DLP policy and an IRM policy. And you can see in the pink ready boxes there, if it detects something where a DLP policy might be able to help you, it's going to recommend that you do that, and same with an insider risk management policy to protect against those data vulnerabilities. And then it generates some reports. I want to point out the last report you see there is sensitive interactions per AI app, because DSPM doesn't look at AI really. It's looking at your data and what end users are doing with it. But it does have a tie-in over to DSPM for AI on that one report, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. Prerequisites for this, I'm not going to belabor this. This is well documented by Microsoft. You need to enable some analytics. You, of course, need to have audit enabled on your tenant. And then it will start an automated scan of what's going on with your data and the user activity. This is what the landing page looks like. You can see number one, that's where Security Copilot is tied in. If you click any of these, it's going to want you to have a Security Copilot license, but you can use these pre-canned questions or ask your own. It's going to have some recommendations. I'm going to show you what those look like. And this is all based on what it sees. Remember that graphic I just showed, the classifiers and the activity and what's at risk. And then there's the reports down at the bottom. And there's also trends. What is, as you use this tool and presumably you start to do some of these DLP and IRM policies and sensitivity labels with protection, what does it look like over time? So this is a metric that maybe you want to bubble up to your seat. So if you're working on this, what is your overall data governance and protection, posture? So let's look at the top data security recommendations. It'll come up with these after it scans your environment. So this is what I've done in my own tenant, and I'm going to pick on this guy, and it has detected that there's 5 activities involved with one of the pre-built trainable classifiers called tax. That is going to identify those types of tax documents. So if I click view recommendation, you can see what it's wanting me to do. It's wanting me to create an insider risk management and a DLP policy. Optional, I have the choice to do this or not. So I'm going to say yes, let's go ahead. So on insider risk management, it suggests some of these things. You can, of course, change this. You don't even have to use this at all. You can just exit and go right over to insider risk management and do it there. But this is an easy way of getting the initial configuration done. You can see it's including all users and groups. It's going to use the insider risk management data leaks policy. It's going to look at tax content specifically. So it's identifying tax as a priority content for insider risk management. And those are all of the indicators that it's going to put in that IRM policy for what people are doing with these tax documents. On the DLP side, you put in a name. It is going to do it in simulation mode. You can turn it on if you want, but I would not recommend that. You want to see what this policy is going to do and monitor the alerts over time. It again is looking for tax. And it is only auditing. There's no policy tips or restrictions or blocking that's going on here. And you can see all the actions that it's going to audit based on what end users are doing on those locations. So if I create policy, it creates them. There's a few minutes before you'll start seeing it, but I'm going to show you what does this look like on the downside. IRM policy, it's created this IRM policy in this tenant. There's the name, all users groups. I can now change this. I don't have to leave it. It's just the initial configuration of it. I want to prioritize content based on trainable classifiers. And you can see it picks tax. I could certainly add a whole bunch of more trainable classifiers in here, and that probably would be a good idea rather than having one IRM policy per classifier. It just depends how you want to triage these. What is the triggering event for this policy? This was all automatically configured for me. And which indicators will generate these IRM alerts. Now, I didn't do this in advance, so I couldn't show you what the IRM dashboard looks like when I trigger one. I'm going to show you one in DSPM for AI. On the DLP policy side, it in fact creates two policies for you, one for the endpoint and one for the Office, the other applications, which you'll see. So I'm going to pick the tax data leak DLP policy. It automatically selects all of these locations. It's going to look for tax activity across any of these. And you can see it is looking when that content is shared outside the organization for the trainable classifier tax. Again, you can modify this. You can't modify the name of the policy though, so you plan ahead. This is one place where, yes, DSPM will do some of these things, but maybe in a broader plan, you want to have different policies and different naming conventions over in DLP. So just be aware of that.
It seems odd, Joanne, that you can't edit the name of this afterwards.
The name of the policy.
Yeah, the name of the
unless
policy.
they change that. Yeah, no, you can't.
Bizarre. Okay.
Yeah. And it's running it in simulation mode. Recommend that. So this is what the DLP simulation mode is going to show. So in this tenant, it's scanned over 60,000 items. It's found some matches for tax and across, those workloads. And, there's the details below what's going on in SharePoint and OneDrive. And then I can just simply, look at what the matching files are, make adjustments if it needs be, or just simply turn it on. So that's the integration point there. Let's look at these three reports. Analytics reports is what DSPM calls them. So this is certainly gives you a broad overview of what is going on across these locations, but a couple things I want to talk about. You can't, in the scan, say, I only want to scan for these 10 classifiers. It will scan all of the classifiers, which is why, I'm seeing all medical terms and conditions. That's probably not in my data. I don't have that kind of data in my tenant, but that's what it's discovered. So what this is showing is any sensitive data that matches any of those classifiers that doesn't have a DLP policy to prevent data exfiltration or doesn't have a sensitivity label applied that controls access. Because remember I said a sensitivity label, when applied to a piece of content, can in fact control access. So to that document, depending on how the label was configured. So even if it was exfiltrated, the external recipient wouldn't be able to access that document if they weren't part of the access control of that sensitivity label. So understanding this means you can just dig into it further. You can use Data Explorer inside Purview to do that. So that's going out into another Purview tool. Another report is users performing top risky activities on unprotected sensitive data. So I say in that box on the right what this is including. So there's users who are performing activities containing sensitive information that aren't protected by DLP or don't have that same sensitivity label. So you can see insider risk management categorizes risky users across a bunch of different metrics, and it separates them out that way. So this is basically understanding the top risks in your organization. You can't drill into these from this point as well. Maybe this is something that will come in the future. I'm not sure. Okay, this is now the tie-in over to DSPM for AI. Gonna dig into this later, but I just wanted to show you kind of where that tie-in happens. To be honest, I was a little confused when DSPM and DSPM for AI first came out. I thought they were the same solution. So I'm trying to separate these two for you in your mind. DSPM for AI, in fact, used to be called Microsoft Purview AI Hub. So you may see some old blog posts and stuff out there. That's now been morphed into DSPM for AI.
Joanne, before we get into this, do you have a couple of minutes for some questions here?
I do.
I'll do my best. DSPM side. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of questions here from Manfred. Is IRM a prerequisite to get the most out of DSPM?
Well, if you don't have the appropriate licensing, and I cover licensing in a table at the end. These IRM policies require E5 or E5 compliance. So you need the licensing first off. And I would say it's a huge value add to be able to monitor end user data related activity across your environment. Like that's very important when you think of your overall data governance plan is what are end users doing with that data and how can we, mitigate that risk if they're doing risky activity. So in that sense, to me, it's required, but you don't need it for, actually you need E5 or E5 compliance for DSPM. So you probably already have that.
Have it as part of our website.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
A question from Sim. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this one. How's your experience using Purview DSPM for AI Foundry models out of Azure?
Okay, so that's DSPM for AI.
Yep.
I don't have any experience in that.
Perfect.
Azure AI Foundry modules. Yeah.
Awesome. And then just one last question before we move on from Kayvan. Does DSPM have a conflict overlap with the recent announcements about DLP on Copilot?
Oh boy. Well, that may be more on DSPM for AI. I don't think it would have any conflicts if that's where you're going with this, but sorry, I can't answer that.
That's okay. Well, yeah, let's move on here and then we'll see. No,
okay.
these are some tricky questions. Folks.
Yeah.
Tricky questions that we got going on.
Okay. Obviously, I have some people who have deep Purview experience in the room.
Yes, it sounds.
Okay.
Okay,
data security posture management. It's for AI. Its value add is accelerating your adoption of AI. Knowing what's going on across your environment, using Microsoft Copilot, but the plethora of other AI apps that are out there. What are end users doing with that? Do you even know what's going on? So this really helps you put in the appropriate controls so you can, start using them with kind of the comfort and confidence that you've got your protections in place. So another infographic, a little bit different, but it integrates with very similar Purview solutions as well. Looks at those same classifiers. How is sensitive data classified in your tenant? So if you're looking at this, any work outside of DSPM for AI, any work you do in Purview will serve you well when it comes time to use AI across your organization. So, AI may be the shiny new tools that are out there, but behind the scenes is the heavy lifting and the hard work that has gone on in improving the data governance in your company. Which AI tools are being used? So there are, I think, over 450 AI tools that Microsoft can look for because you might not know what end users are deciding to download or use in a browser. You need to control all of that. What are or is there sensitive data detected in the interaction by an end user? And what data sources are used in the interaction? A bunch of data sources can be used there. And what browser are they using while they're doing it? So a whole bunch of things are going into DSPM for AI's overall recommendations to you. It does the same thing. It looks at the sensitivity labels you have in your organization. Do labels exist? What's labeled and what isn't? What are the usage rights on the label? In Copilot, you need the extract and view usage rights for Copilot to use that for an end user doing a prompt. So that's something that's defined within a sensitivity label. It's going to recommend some things. This is where AI regulations from within Compliance Manager come to the forefront. Is NIST AI risk management framework, a bunch of very specific activities that they've put forth inside Compliance Manager on what are some good things to do. So look at that. And data risk assessment. This is the star, I believe, of DSPM for AI. It looks at the top 100 used sites in your environment. And what's important about this is it allows you to prioritize your most at-risk sites. Because if you're facing all of your sites in your tenant, how do you know where to begin? I mean, they're all important, but you don't have all of the time in the world, so you really need to focus on where can you make the biggest impact first. So that's what the data risk assessment was built for. And it does a whole bunch of things. You'll see, I'm going to walk through an example of all this, but you can see that same construct: identify or discover the data, protect it, and then monitor it for each of those 100 sites. And then there's a bunch of one-click policies you can do if you want. And they will recommend these based on what it sees across your environment, everything from communication compliance, insider risk management again, adaptive protection, DLP, so on and so forth. And the collection policy allows you to use interactions in Copilot and Fabric and Security Copilot within this as well. So you can monitor those interactions. Prerequisites for DSPM for AI kind of depends on what it is that you're monitoring. The first one is for Microsoft Copilot experiences and agents. It's basically making sure you have audit enabled. It is by default. And then once you get out of the Copilot world and into these other AI websites, there's a few other things you need to enable or configure so you can see that activity. So the Purview browser extension lets you see risky activity or the prompts and the responses going back and forth on Edge, Chrome, and Firefox. You need to onboard your devices to Microsoft Purview so you can see device activity that is going on with them. And then this will create two things. Insider risk management policy, these are optional, and a DLP policy for what users are doing with those other AI apps or AI assistants. So just wanted to show you And Microsoft will be updating this all the time. There's over 450 Gen AI sites that are currently supported that it looks for when end users are doing their thing. Because unless you're really tightly controlling your environment, you sometimes won't know what end users are doing. So an example of a DLP policy to block upload of a sensitive file to Claude.ai. So I'm in here and I'm asking it about customer AA1111. In this particular tenant, that's a custom classifier that I've built. And it doesn't know anything about it. So then I decide to upload a file that has that information in it. So I've selected a document, and you can see I've got some sensitive information in there. When I do that, this is a DLP message, and I've configured it to allow an override. Probably in production, you wouldn't allow the override, but I just, am showing how to do that.
Yeah, this is amazing, Joanne. I mean, considering the amount of leaks I know that we've heard from customers around, hey, people are taking documents from SharePoint and uploading them into, Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT or any one of those tools to get information out of it.
Yeah.
This would be great.
And it's a pretty easy configuration to do, really, because Microsoft has that long list of 450 plus sites already in a group for you. Just select Gen AI sites. It's kept up to date for you, and it happens automatically.
Yeah, is anyone using that in the audience already in your organization? Because again, I think it's like you said, I think it's extremely powerful. They need one. They need one for Dropbox and for Google Drive as well to stop people from slamming stuff in there as well. But no, this would be extremely useful for organizations, especially like you said. I'm sure there is a lot of sensitive information being uploaded to some of these sites.
Yeah, for sure. And it may not be for nefarious reasons, but it's still a problem whether it is or not that you need to block. Okay, AI regulations. I just wanted to talk about that. In the recommendations for DSPM for AI, you will see this guided assistance to AI regulations. I want to call this out because those in the compliance and legal area are keenly interested in this. This is kind of outside of, well, it's related to technology, but it's more related to the regulations and the frameworks that are kind of, good to adhere to. So if you open one of these, it's going to say there's a bunch of actions you can take. So if I open one of these, it is using the NIST AI risk management framework. There's the steps. So you can see many of these steps are just, some of them are technical, some of them aren't, but many of them will tell you to go to Purview and do something, enable audit, use, in this case, they're telling you to search for Copilot within the audit logs, and look for a particular sensitive information type if you're doing some triaging. So I think this is good. This isn't going to do any of that for you. If you click the view regulation button on the bottom, you just go to Compliance Manager. You'll see that risk management framework template, and then it will suggest a bunch of steps. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's the tie-in to many of these actions that you have to do. And the star of the show, I would say, is the data risk assessment. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in my tenant. I'll show you, all the dirty laundry there. One thing I want to talk about is why this is so important when it comes to AI is that the biggest problem that you're facing is oversharing. And oversharing is the top data security risk for you to, want to bring in Copilot or any AI tool for that matter into your organization. So here, Microsoft shares these reasons or causes for oversharing broadly. These are kind of the big hitters. So what they've done is Microsoft has come up with some blueprints. This is for E3 and E5 to address oversharing concerns. The data risk assessment is bullet number 1 under pilot. Basically, that's what it's doing, identifying the 100 most used sites and assessing the oversharing risk on those sites. So many of the things that DSPM for AI is suggesting is kind of covered in this on the things you can enable. So this is the default assessment. It runs once every week and identifies your top 100 sites. So this is going to change over time, presumably, based on activity. And you can see the number of items it's scanned. What's interesting is the sensitivity labels on data. So you can see there's over 9,000 items not labeled, some of which has sensitive information types in it. Those sensitive information types, remember, that's all the classifiers. So, maybe there's matches there that aren't a concern to you, but it's interesting to see this metric. I'm hoping that Microsoft will make those classifiers selectable so you can kind of ignore the ones that truly will never be a concern in your tenant. There's some caution with that though. And then, the sharing that's going on across your environment. So if I pick my top site, short-term engagements, there's going to be a bunch of options for me. Overview, there's that identify, protect, and monitor I talked about. And this is, the site-specific metrics. First of all is identify. So Microsoft recently released something called an on-demand classification that you can do across SharePoint and OneDrive only right now, that you can go back and scan all historical data. Maybe it hasn't never been modified or not modified in a very long time, and classifiers have changed. So there are reasons why you want to do this. So I'm just going to scan everything in this site. I want to make sure I've got everything classified as up to date as possible, because there's many controls that rely on that classification. That's why this is important. So doing that is going to estimate what it's about to do, because there's a cost with this. It basically builds a scan and starts it for you under information protection inside of Microsoft Purview. So I'm going to flip over there and I see it under on-demand classification, and I'm going to view the estimation. So
so this is even if you have E5, right, Joanne, just to be clear for people, this is an additional paid on-demand thing.
Yes. It is. So it depends on how much data is going to be reclassified. This doesn't cost anything, but if I actually want to reclassify it, that's where the cost comes in.
Got it. Okay. So the finding the information doesn't cost anything, but then if you want to go and reclassify it, that's when the paid add-on, or it's pay as you go, essentially.
That's right. So if I want to view the estimation, this is where it's going to show you the cost. Now, this is a very small site, so the cost is very low, but you can imagine in some of your very big sites, this cost could be up there. That's where this additional cost comes in. So I want to start classification, confirm. This is what this is doing. And this is, again, the tie-in back to Microsoft Purview. Each file, once it's classified it's going to evaluate it against your current DLP policies, your information protection policies, DLM policies, IRM policies, all of those things. It's going to trigger the appropriate actions, such as DLP and IRM alerts, and then actually apply sensitivity and retention labels if the conditions are met based on that classification. So it's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, very important. So I would suggest making sure you've got all your policies kind of up to date before you incurred the cost to do this, if in fact you've decided to do this. But it is a very important part of ensuring all of your data is classified and protected. So that cost me $1.40. In the name of science. Okay, so if I click items for review, I can see all of the files here. I'm just going to pick one file. If I look at the details of this file, this is what the process is doing behind the scenes. It's looking for all of those classifiers inside the content And this is kind of behind the scenes, but this is how Microsoft determines what's a DLP rule match, etc.
Just a question here, Joanne, from
Yeah,
Christine. Is there a way to
yeah.
determine the false positives for non-label items?
The false positives. Sorry, I got a thing for non-labeled items.
Correct.
Well, false positives are, I would probably do it by going into Data Explorer and look at the label of what's been inaccurately labeled. And then, I mean, there's no easy way of doing it. Let's just be clear here. And then, peruse that list. I think you can export it now as well if you need to. And look at why is it classifying it that way. You can just, and then dig into the details, and maybe you have to build a custom classifier that is a bit more specific so you don't get those false positives. False negatives and false positives are challenging to deal with, to be honest, inside Purview. That's a huge beast to deal with. Okay, moving on to protect. There's a ton of things it will suggest in here. Restrict access by label. So this is telling you, we think you need to go create a DLP policy because we're seeing activity on some of your labeled content that might be a problem. Let's say it doesn't do it for you, it just tells you to do it. So I'm showing you what this looks like. There actually is another location inside of DLP called Microsoft 365 Copilot. If I select that and create my DLP rule, I can say these sensitivity labels. In this example, I'm picking if it's medical or highly confidential. You can see the action: prevent Copilot from processing this content. So what that looks like in action is I've got a highly confidential labeled file here. I know I've got some watermarks on there. I've got a fake social insurance number, and I can see the sensitivity label on it is highly confidential. If this user is going into Teams and they're asking, what is the SIN number that's in this document? And then they're uploading that highly confidential file. You can see Copilot has a comment there. Its content is restricted by your organization security policies. So it's not extracting that information. So that's what this DLP policy looks like in here. Activity Explorer is going to show you, so for that same interaction that user just did inside Teams, if I were to open this up and view the related AI interaction activity with the right permission role, I can actually see on the interaction details the prompt that end user did and the response that came back. Okay. So just so you're aware, that information is exposed inside of here, which is why you need Content Explorer Content Viewer role to see this. The next protect action is restrict all items. This is using a SharePoint restricted content discoverability, RCD. Now, this will basically make it so everything on this site is not discoverable by Copilot, but it has the unfortunate downstream effect that it also affects org-wide search results. So although if you had a site and you thought, oh boy, we need to get this, out of Copilot's purview, if you will, this is a good thing to do. But I consider this a temporary approach until you can put more targeted controls in place, like sensitivity labels and DLP policies, etc. But it certainly is possible to do this.
Yeah, this is definitely the sledgehammer, right, Joanne?
It is.
Because it gets removed from Copilot, but it also gets removed from search. So people can't,
That's right.
They don't know that the site even exists, essentially, which can create some problems.
For sure. And it is a SharePoint Advanced Management feature, so it's additional licensing as well. Next one is create default sensitivity label for a SharePoint document library. So This capability has been around for a while now. In any SharePoint library, you can set the default sensitivity label, and you may want to do that on some of these sites. So by default, maybe everything gets a confidential all employees sensitivity label on it. So this doesn't set it for you, it just takes you there so you can set it. Assign default sensitivity label. So I want to talk about this one because if you don't currently have sensitivity labels defined in your tenant, it can automatically create them for you and set which one is default in a publishing label policy. I would caution against that a little bit because deciding what your sensitivity label taxonomy is a big effort. Lots of thought needs to go into it, but you can certainly do this. I'm linking at the bottom the labels it will actually configure for you, what Microsoft calls default, which is this set. This might not suit your purposes at all, or you might say, I'm just going to do this because this is what kind of Microsoft considers default, but just know going in, this is what it is going to create. You can, of course, change it after the fact, but just to me, there's a little bit more thoughtful planning that should go in rather than just have DSPM for AI create them. But you may disagree with that. Next one is create auto labeling policies. So it's picked some, I think credit card examples is what it uses to be able to, both on the client side, baked into the sensitivity label, and the service side, to be able to go and automatically apply a sensitivity label. Again, you may already have these, you may want to do this outside of this tool, but it will do it for you if you want. Site sensitivity label controls other things like guest access, external sharing, site privacy. You definitely should be looking at this on these top 100 sites on maybe we should have a site sensitivity label or a container sensitivity label, it's sometimes called, to control some of these things. Maybe you don't want guests in there. That's an easy way of doing it at the site level. And then I couldn't find this as a configurable option, but it's looking for things older than 3 years. I don't know why they picked 3, and suggesting that you might want to put a retention policy in place to get rid of ROT, redundant, obsolete, and trivial content. It doesn't create the policy for you. It just shoots you over to the data lifecycle management page where you can create the policy to suit your needs.
So Joanne, just looking at this default assessment, I mean, what it's essentially doing is here's 100 sites that we think that you should do a bunch of stuff on, right?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of helps you do. I mean, none of these are new capabilities like defining, adding sensitivity labels to document libraries, assigning default sensitivity labels, adding them at the container. It just, this is almost like a nicer UI shortcut to help you going through here. Got it.
Yeah. I think Microsoft uses the single pane of glass or the dashboard or that kind of thing. You're right. Like all of the work, if you've already done a lot of this work, it probably would still be interesting to come in here and see what it thinks of that and maybe identify some gaps. But yes, nothing new is under the sun on all of this stuff that's on the right-hand side. 100%.
Got it. So we just got about 5 more minutes here, Joanne. I've got a couple of questions, but why don't I leave it to you? Let's go through the monitor stuff because that's important, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Okay, just a couple things. One is you can do access reviews, which you might want to do to identify and mitigate the risks with some of those sharing links, and an intra-access review to review, maybe the guests or the users that are on that site. What does that look like? So I can leave this. We're going to share the PowerPoint after, so we can, I'm assuming we can share this, and then I can answer some questions in the room.
Awesome. Thanks, Joanne. Okay, a couple of questions here. From Aaron Kumar. Aaron Kumar, if I butchered your name, I apologize. Is this create auto labeling policy the same as on-demand classification? I don't think so, right?
No.
Yeah,
the on-demand will go back further in time and check all the historical non-modified data. So no, it's a different thing than a service-side auto-labeling policy, yes.
Yeah, so the on-demand classification, from what I understand, Joanne, would be like, hey, we've got a bunch of stuff here, millions of documents. we want to assign, let's say, sensitivity labels to them.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it manually. We create a bunch of rules. We press a button, and this on-demand thing goes and does it essentially for us.
Yeah. Telling you the cost of it before you do it. Yeah.
Yes, which can get quite costly because what did you have, $1.40 for 700 documents?
Yeah.
Then, yeah, if that's US as well, that's like $10 Canadian. So who knows?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of comments here from Nathan. DSPM for AI does unfortunately recommend some very far-reaching policies without providing details on impact. So not an easy click-through set of recommendations.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, there's a bunch of recommendations. This does not preclude somebody being there that understands the downstream effect of enabling all of these policies. Yes.
Yep. From Manfred here, how many human resource? Okay, how many people, Manfred? I'm gonna take your question and see if I can reword it and see if it makes sense. I think essentially what Manfred's asking is how many people do you need to monitor and act on DSPM for AI outcomes? Like, would this be a full-time role for someone, Joanne? Would it be a part-time role? Or does it really depend? I guess.
Well, I mean, the consultant answer is it depends, but I think, oh man, I see this being part of your day job, certainly. I don't think I don't know unless there's going to be an AI technical or system administrator. How I see this working is you still have maybe people that focus in on data loss prevention and information protection, and they will understand the implications of some of these assessments and kind of run the show on that. You might have somebody different on insider risk management and communication compliance and the tie-ins with that. So I see it being a couple of different hats. Whether you have those on different teams in your organization or not is usually based on size. Yep. I've seen DLP teams. That's where there's a team of 8 and that's all they do in very large organizations.
Yeah.
So it just depends. But I'm going to go back to your point earlier. It's really important to understand Purview very well before using this tool to automatically create these things. As a matter of fact, there should be a warning before you do it. Do you understand the implications? Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, question for me, is DSPM a competitor for Orchestry anyway? I wouldn't say no, it isn't, simply because Orchestry does a whole bunch breadth more stuff. But what we are going to do is integrate a lot of those Purview capabilities into Orchestry. So kind of the ability to use things like sensitive information types out of Purview for data classification. And also I do really like what they've done, that ability to go through a site, and add a sensitivity label, add a retention label, do all of those things. That's all coming up in Orchestry as well through our workspace actions piece as well. We got one more minute here. One more question here, Joanne. Are both of these products available in GCC?
Oh, I forgot to look that up. I'm sorry. I don't know. Okay. Sorry.
Is E5 required? That was going to be my other question. It is. It's either E5 or the E5 or the compliance add-on.
Or E5 compliance, yeah.
Or E5 compliance add-on as well.
Many of the things it wants to create are E5 capabilities, like an insider risk management policy and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. We're right on time. Joanne, amazing as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you, of course, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for all of the questions. As always, we will send the recording over. Joanne, are you okay with sending the presentation over to these folks
100%.
as well?
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
So we'll send you all of that as well. Join us for our next webinar in 2 weeks as well, all about Planner Pro and using Orchestry to create project management sites. So that'd be great. Joanne, thank you again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And we got through the event. Started it early, some craziness.
Yeah.
We made it happen.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for
everyone.
joining, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.